The Capitals fall in the second game of the back-to-back with the New York Rangers.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals fall to the Rangers on Sunday afternoon, a matinee game in the Big Apple. What went wrong? We'll talk about that in the show. A little bit later, we will talk about, despite the loss, that Charlie Lindgren was huge in this game. And oftentimes we hear, well, you know, your team lost. It must have been the goalie's fault. Make no mistake about it. Charlie Lindgren was the right guy for the game today. It's just that the Capitals were folding in front of him. And we need to see a whole lot more of Charlie Lindgren. A little bit later, we will talk about the new look top line for the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin's absence. But just to get it going here, talking about how the Caps fall in the back-to-back to the Rangers. An interesting game, all things considered. You take a look at the game yesterday, Saturday. It was a Caps team that was really dialed in, really played a big game. Contrast that with the game today, and the Capitals were up against it right away. New York scored immediately. So right away, the Capitals were back on their heels trying to defend, but they did a good job. And it's an interesting thing to say when you say a team did a pretty good job when they lose the game, but they did. Make no mistake about it, to start the game, the defense was not really that dialed in, but in the latter part of the game, it seemed like the team was trying to make a push. And for me, in the second period there, I thought there were points in the game that maybe the Capitals could turn this around and pick up a big win. What bigger thing to do than take down the first place in the Metro Division New York Rangers in 2 consecutive games? Wow, that would have been something, but it wasn't to be. The Capitals had success Saturday against the Rangers. Again, that wasn't the case Sunday afternoon in the Big Apple, as the Rangers poured on the pressure from the moment the puck dropped. And, if it was a more inexperienced goalie, maybe it was a guy that wasn't used to playing under pressure like Charlie Lindgren was, I think this game could have got out of hand. And, like I talked about, oftentimes people say, well, would the Capitals have been better with Kemper in there? Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Ultimately, no. I don't think they would have been better. It's just, it wasn't Charlie Lindgren's fault per se. Like I said, it was the team in front of him that collapsed. I'm not here to absolve Charlie Lindgren from all guilt, but I'm not going to place this squarely on his shoulder, because after the first goal was allowed, he could have folded. He could have withdrawn in, but he found a way to play huge. And I'll talk about Charlie a little bit later in the show. Lindgren played big, ultimately wasn't enough. TJ Oshie, huge. Since returning from his injury, TJ Oshie was the only Cap to find the back of the net. Take a look at the game last night as well, or yesterday afternoon, right in front of the net. Puts himself in a great position to do big things, and guess what? It pays off. TJ Oshie has tremendous hockey IQ and vision. He sees the ice in front of him and puts himself in the perfect position, and he has been huge for the Capitals since his return. Oshie led the Capitals with 7 shots on goal. And to kind of talk about what I was mentioning off the top, that despite the loss, the Capitals played pretty well. Carlson and Kuzi both had 4 shots on goal. The defense at moments was pretty poor. The Capitals spent time on the penalty kill, way more than they should have. And ultimately, I believe that was the big part of their demise Sunday afternoon. The Capitals didn't start to generate, or they did rather start to generate some opportunities, but New York was pretty clamped down defensively. I think that there was, Peter Laviolette most likely put the Rangers on notice and saying, we are not losing 2 games to the Capitals, and especially not at home. Figure it out, guys. And they were ready for it. There were times that I thought the Caps were going to be able to turn it around late in the second period. I really did. You take a look at what TJ Oshie did in the game. I thought there was a possibility. It's difficult to win hockey games in the penalty box, and that proved costly for the Caps. The Caps had to try and kill off 5 penalties. That is not a formula for winning hockey games, to spend a lion's share of the time in the penalty box. And the New York Rangers made the Capitals pay. The Capitals fared pretty well, as Rangers have one of the better PPs in the league. Listen, if it wasn't for Lindgren, if it wasn't for the teams willing to, not have such a good penalty kill, this game could have gotten way out of hand. The Capitals were ultimately lucky that it was as close as it was. And I know at the end of the day, it's either a W or it's an L. I guess it could be in overtime. And at the end of the day, the Capitals did get the L, but that's the thing. That's the thing this team is going to have to work on, is stringing together consecutive wins. It's great you pick up 1 win, but then you drop 1, and consistency is going to be key for the Capitals if they have grander plans for doing things this season. This wasn't a game of a total meltdown, though. If you just watch the highlights, or say you just read the breakdown from a beat writer, it wasn't the case. It wasn't a total meltdown. The Caps did their best to stop the bleeding by laying out in front of shots and clearing the puck out of their zone. I just think that they got off to the wrong start. Positive momentum was vacuumed out of the room the moment that New York scored so early in the game. Carberry did what he could do to get the offense going by mixing and matching the lines, putting Dowd and Kuzi on the third line with Wilson. And sometimes when you mix and match like that, you catch a bit of lightning in the bottle. If you remember back when they put Pacioretty on the top line, and now he is again, that sometimes when you mix and match, sometimes you can do it too much. I think that was to the detriment of Peter Laviolette last season. But I think that, it's working. Spencer Carberry is doing what he can do to get this team going. Sometimes it's just not in the cards, and I hate to say that, but you take a look at it, it's new systems rolling out, but we're at the halfway point of the season. If they don't know the systems by this point, I don't think they ever will. But again, that's my assessment of this game, is that the vacuum sucked all the positivity out the moment that New York struck first, and then the Capitals were trying to claw their way back in. When TJ Oshie scored the goal, I'm like, they're going to do it. Can they do it? Ultimately wasn't the case, but what you have to do is just brush your shoulders off and get ready for the next one. If you're an everydayer of the show, I said that, don't dwell too much on victory. Also, don't dwell too much on negativity. Watch the film, learn what went wrong, see if you can learn something from that, and don't make those same mistakes again in the next game, because the Capitals are going to be busy here, and they have no time to waste as they're trying to claw their way back into the Metro. It is going to be difficult. I mean, make no mistake about it. They're not where I hoped that they would be. They're not where they were at the Thanksgiving break. And as we come, ever so more and more close to the All-Star break, there are measuring checkpoints throughout the season, where you are at Thanksgiving, where you are at the All-Star break. The Capitals have some time to try to make up some ground, but they are, kind of on the outside looking in. As some teams around them are getting better and better, the Capitals continue to struggle. I think that, it's going to be a lot for, Brian McClellan to take a look at this team. If he believes they're in contention, he could be a buyer. If he believes that they're already out of it, he could be a seller like he was last year. That's how the Capitals got Rasmus Sandin and parted ways with Orlov and Hathaway. So, it's up to the Capitals. The fate is in their hands, but I think that to a certain extent, at the end of the day, that Spencer Carberry's doing, Brian McClellan, GM, I'm doing what I can do here. I'm trying to do what I can do to get this team to win. I don't have the pieces to help me win. And as you take a look around the NHL, there are teams that are in need of a goalie. And I know that generally speaking, goalies don't fetch a really big return. But one of the things that I talk about on this show is this team has an abundance of really grade A goaltenders. Could they use that to get an upgrade? Is that going to be enough to get a top six forward? Probably not. Just like I said, that goalies, generally speaking, don't fetch a big return. So it would be a goalie plus like a blue liner or maybe a prospect. This team is a couple pieces away from being contenders. If you're asking me right now, all in, is this team as it stands right now? Let's go ahead and put Ovechkin back in the mix. Are they going to be contenders and make a push into the playoffs? Probably not. I still think there are a couple moves away from being contenders. Pacioretty has been good. Ethan Bear has been good, but it is not enough to get them over the hump where they need to be in contention. And I really hope that, Brian McClellan isn't looking at this season already as just like, well, we'll take care of it in the summer. We'll deal with Kuzi and Mantha and whatever else in the summer. I hope that's not the case. I hope that he has something up his sleeve that happens between now and the trade deadline that's going to help bolster this team. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about the new look top line for the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin's absence. How did it fare? I think it is a work in progress. And ultimately, I think that, Ovi is going to be coming back sooner or later. How did it look on Sunday afternoon? I'll discuss next. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and more. And let me tell you something, guys. If you're watching a football game and maybe your team's already out of it and you're not that into it, open up the FanDuel app. Put a little bit of money on the game. It makes watching the game that much more exciting. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Capitals and Spencer Carberry had to construct a new top line in Alex Ovechkin's absence. And the luxury that the Capitals have right now is it seems like it's going pretty good. That Alex Ovechkin, goal scoring wise, is not having the season that he had hoped for, that I had hoped for, that anyone had hoped for. But maybe he can take his time to make sure that he's 100%, because it's still my belief that I'm not talking about this most recent injury. I think that there has been something wrong with him all season. It's either that or his, style of play is not compatible with Spencer Carberry. I just don't buy the fact that Alex Ovechkin got so old over the summer and forgot how to play hockey or score goals. It just doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to say is I hope that Alex Ovechkin takes his time and is ultimately ready when he makes his return. In Ovi's absence, Carberry constructed a top line of Pacioretty, Strome, and Oshie. Oshie has been a big contributor after returning from his injury. TJ Oshie is, kind of an up and down player, ultimately always a really solid guy that puts himself in a position to win. I guess what I'm talking about in the up and down is the goal scoring. I know that he has scored goals here recently, and that's a good thing, but I'm talking, in totality, of this season and the previous season, that sometimes he's not letting up the score sheet, shall we say. He is a guy that plays much bigger than he is, and subsequently, oftentimes, that leads to his injuries. But we love the brand of hockey that TJ Oshie plays because he always puts himself in a position to succeed. And I like what I see on the ice with Oshie. I feel like Ovi shouldn't have to rush back until he's 100%. The Caps have had success with Pacioretty, Strome, and Oshie. Obviously, we want Ovi to come back, but I don't think there's a rush for him to come back. Get well. Be 100%. Maybe there is something that he can, figure in his game to get him where he needs to be. But don't feel the need that you need to rush back. I know that over his head, he's got that whole thing of, I've got to catch Gretzky. And I think that ultimately that is weighing heavy on his mind and might be, to a certain extent why, he hasn't been so successful in the goal scoring department. He's getting the shots, just not finding the back of the net. TJ Oshie scores his 4th goal of the season in this game today. It cut the deficit to 2-1, getting the Capitals also close, but it wasn't to be. Oshie has now scored in back-to-back games and has recorded 4 points, 3 goals, 1 assist in his last 5 games played dating back to December 14th. Is this the time of the season that Oshie's going to turn it up and really show what he's got? I really hope so. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see Oshie and Pacioretty and Strome and Wilson and Mantha, all these key contributors, these integral pieces of this team, all pull on the rope at the same time and figure it out here. Make a push for the playoffs. Dylan Strome recorded the primary assist on Oshie's goal, his 11th assist of the season. Strome has recorded 6 points, 2 goals, 4 assists in his last 8 games. Dylan Strome knocking it out of the park all season. There's, you can't really say anything bad about Dylan Strome's game. It's all positive. And it has been just a key piece to this team. Max Pacioretty, who earned the secondary assist on Oshie's goal, has recorded 3 points, 1 goal, 2 assists in his last 4 games. Max Pacioretty is the guy that we know they picked up last summer. He's going to be great. 6 different times in his career, he scored 30 goals, but we're going to have to wait. It's like being a kid on Christmas and, the tree's up early and people are talking about it. You're like, I want my present right now. You're going to have to wait. The Capitals and the fans had to wait. And it does appear as though it's been worth it, as Max Pacioretty has been really good, I'm going to go ahead and say. And I still think that he is ramping up. I don't think that he is ultimately, at his peak or pinnacle of where he's going to be. And I like his brand of hockey. I liked watching him play, even when he was on different teams, on the Canadiens, when he was playing on the Golden Knights. He is a dynamic hockey player, great shot. And despite the fact that he's had back-to-back Achilles issues, can skate pretty well, I guess, all things considered. The thing that we hope for Pacioretty is continued production, goal scoring, assists, those type of things, and really keep our fingers crossed that everything is okay with his Achilles. Back-to-back seasons, that's a tough thing. We really hope that he doesn't have to face anything like that again. But the top line for the Capitals was absolutely great in the game that I saw today. And ultimately, I want to see more of that. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out once Ovechkin does return. But I like that Max Pacioretty on the top line. I think that is a really good option. And we hope to see a whole lot more of that coming up. All right, so coming up here after the break, that despite the loss, that Charlie Lindgren played a great game. People are going to say, what are you talking about, Dan? The Capitals lost and he was the netminder. Listen, if it wasn't for Charlie in there, the Capitals would have been, way blown out. What did Charlie bring and what did he mean for this Caps team? I'll discuss next. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And if there's one thing that's frustrating for me is that when my favorite band comes to town, or my favorite comedian, or my favorite sports team, and I can't find tickets, Game Time takes the stress out of buying tickets. And that is why you need Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a big question that's surrounded Capitals fans is, can you believe it? Charlie Lindgren is going to be playing in back-to-back games. Can you believe it? Well, I can believe it, as it is something that happens quite often in the AHL. Sometimes 3 games, because a lot of times in the AHL, they play on weekends. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that kind of thing. And generally, it's not something that happens a whole lot in the NHL. But I agree with the Capitals coaching their assessment to Spencer Carberry that they should have gone with Charlie Lindgren. Why? Because I think that ultimately Chucky Sideburns gave the Capitals the best chance at winning the game. And if you actually watch the game, you didn't just watch the highlights or read the breakdown, he was key in the Capitals keeping this game as close as it was. Despite the tough loss, the Caps made the right decision by going Lindgren. Like I talked about, it's always easy to say woulda, shoulda, coulda. Should we have gone with Kemper? But I still believe Lindgren gave the Caps the best chance at winning. There's only so much you can do when the defense is folding in front of you and spending time on the PK. And if you saw, there were some truly spectacular saves that Charlie Lindgren made today that I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't think that maybe Darcy Kemper could have made. I don't think that there's an argument anymore. I know that Charlie Lindgren is the number 1 netminder for the Capitals right now. The good position for the Capitals is they have quite a luxury, as Darcy Kemper is no slouch. I'm not trying to say that he's a poor goalie, but if I'm going to pick, who is better, then I'm going to say, as I record this right now, that Charlie Lindgren is the better option. And the great luxury for the Capitals is you go down to Hershey, it gets just equally consistent as you take a look at Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson, that the Capitals are always in a good position. But I do agree with the assessment of the coaches that despite the fact that it was a back-to-back, putting Charlie in the game was huge. He saved 29 of 31. Lindgren going back-to-back was not that big of a deal, even though people want to make it a big deal. And, the thing of it is that was tough is Panarin found the back of the net early in the game. And on a weekend goalie, and it might really have messed with his mentality, if it was a weaker goalie. That was the thing is that, you take a look at the Rangers, they scored first. And sometimes when that happens right away, then I think that affects the goalie, in particular more harshly than it does some of the other players, because now they feel like I let the team down. Are they going to be able to get back into it? Charlie, that was not his issue today. I think that he got better as the game went on. I think he's like, that was a bad goal that went in there. I wish that didn't happen. But ultimately, he battened down the hatches and played lights out hockey for the duration. Again, I wish you would have got the win. But, only so much of this blame, if there's blame to get put around here, goes with Charlie Lindgren. Listen, they spent a lot of time on the PK. To start the game, the defense wasn't totally dialed in. Only so much of that blame can go on Charlie. I still think that he did a great job in the next game. Yes, I would start Charlie Lindgren again. You better believe it. And I think that that's the right mentality. I don't think you should get so hung up on titles, even though I just talked about who the number 1 is, but I'm just doing that for ranking purposes. I don't think that on a whole that you should say, this is my number 1, this is my number 2, I think that you go with the hot hand. You take a look at the goalie historically, analytically, that does the best against that opponent. And as it stands right now, Charlie Lindgren gives the Capitals the best chance at winning. Darcy Kemper is going to get his opportunity again. And I'm not going, don't walk away from this podcast thinking that I think that Darcy Kemper is a poor goalie. It's just that Charlie Lindgren is the better goalie. And I think that ultimately the one that gives the Capitals the best chance at winning. Now it puts the Caps in an interesting position as they do have that abundance of talent between the pipes that maybe one of those pieces is expendable. And that's something for Brian McClellan to explore. But as it stands right now, if you take a look at the box score and you're just, kind of didn't watch the game, man, Charlie must have sucked. The Capitals lost. Wasn't the case. Lights out. And I'm just really happy how great he's doing because, he's an interesting guy before he came here. I don't think a lot of people knew who Charlie Lindgren was. I mean, he was a name that, unless you were just like this over the top hockey nerd, I don't think you necessarily knew, but he has been nothing but lights out for the Capitals this season. And we hope to see a whole lot more of that kind of production from him here going forward. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful, and I have you guys to thank. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.